Welcome back to the Commanders Declassified podcast, your source for the best Commanders talk out there. Mike, what's going on, man? Haven't seen you in a while. What happened? What happened on Sunday? Anything happen?
Yeah, I. It's like we flashed back to last season. That was very reminiscent of the Lions game from 2022,
Oh,
and
terrible.
the fact that we play the Eagles right after. I'm like, oof, not
That
looking
was
good right now.
that was a stinker of all stinkers, and it reeked of a Scott Turner special. Like no adjustment, no nothing. We're just gonna straight drop back 5-7 step drop and sack interception, and that's all she wrote. Awful, awful, awful game. Um, but that was Sunday, and the team's got to get on from that. It was awful. It was ugly. It was everything you did not want to see from quarterback, from the offense, from the defense. Hopefully they can get it fixed because this week, which is what this episode's about, is the Philadelphia Eagles. One of the best teams in football, certainly one of the best in the NFC. Mike, what do you think about just overall this matchup, this game? We're at 2-1. We're what, this will be the fourth game. It's almost a quarter through the season. I mean, if I told you, let's say we lose this game against the Eagles. If I told you we were going to start out the year 2-2, how would you feel about that?
I would take it. It would be expected. That's what made last week's game and this week's game so important. Everyone kept talking about measuring stick this, measuring stick that. You measured against the best, one of the best, and it didn't look too good. I mean, it looked very, like I said, it felt like it was a flashback. It looked very similar to the game against Buffalo in 2021, I believe.
Yep.
They hung around for 3 quarters, and then the levees broke. So they have to find ways to steal these games, or not even steal them, but just beat a team.
Absolutely. This is Ron Rivera has said this measuring stick twice now. These comments, these measuring sticks twice, both about Buffalo, right? In that 2021 game you referenced, and this past Sunday, and he's 0-2. And not only was it a measuring stick game, well, the Buffalo Bills took the measuring stick from us and beat us with it. Like that's how bad the game was.
Like we were in kindergarten again.
Yes, like we were in kindergarten. They did to us. So, very clearly not up to the task on Sunday. But we get another shot at it on this coming Sunday against the Philadelphia Eagles, and it will be just as hard, if not even harder, against Philly this time around, who's undefeated and looking really, really good. Let's start here, Mike, with this matchup. Wide receivers against the Philadelphia cornerbacks. Like, what kind of matchups are we looking at here? How do we shape up?
So I guess we can start out with the best from both sides. Terry McLaurin for Washington. I was about to say Dre Bly. That's real old school.
Because you said Lions, that's why it brought that back up.
I'm sorry. Darius Slay, cornerback for the Eagles, formerly of the Lions.
Oh yeah, there you go.
Those two have so much respect for each other. It's crazy. Like after every game, I see Darius Slay give McLaurin the utmost praise, whether they win or lose. He talks about Terry so much, and rightfully so, because more often than not, McLaurin has gotten the best of Slay, in Philly and in Detroit. So you want to give the edge to Washington just based on that alone, but it can go deeper. You got Devontae Smith, slim wide receiver from Alabama. Emmanuel Forbes, slim cornerback from Mississippi State. I can't wait to see them two match up. Like this is like we got bony on bony, skinny on skinny. Like that's going to be a battle. I can't wait to see that. And outside of that, I'm sorry, we're still talking about our wide receivers and cornerbacks. I'm sorry, yeah. I brought up Devontae Smith, but it's the same for Philly. Like they need help from their cornerbacks outside of Darius Slay. Josh Joby, never even heard of him to be honest with you. Like I have no idea where he came from. James Bradbury, the same thing with McLaurin. McLaurin usually gets the best of him too. So if McLaurin can, handle Slay, you got Dotson against Joby or Job. Is it Job or I don't even know what it is. And
Josh
watch
Jobe,
this.
yeah.
So I don't like. It's hard for me to even talk about the wide receivers, our wide receivers versus cornerbacks, because I know you're about to talk about the line. I just don't trust them. So It's really hard to break it down because it's kind of dependent on that. But if Howell can get time, if the O-line can block, I think our receivers can get off on this on these secondary players for the Eagles, like they did last season.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think the corners themselves, if you talk about frontline starters, Darius Slay, he's really good. Bradbury, he's solid. Behind those guys, I don't think there's much depth, but their performance is tied into that D line of Philadelphia, and that's where I'm going to start with is the D line of the Philadelphia Eagles versus our offensive line. So the Philadelphia Eagles, they're 3-0, and they've been led by their offensive and defensive lines, in particular, that defensive line. That defensive line, boasts Jalen Carter, rookie draft pick, University of Georgia, who is causing all kinds of issues for offensive line so far this year. Brandon Graham, longtime Eagle, defensive end, pass rusher, solid player, good player. Josh Sweat, another defensive end who's out there, good player. You got Jordan Davis, the behemoth, 340-pounder, also from Georgia, also another first-round pick as well. And then I think their other defensive tackle Fletcher Cox is also still there. It's still a problem and still really good. So you've got a strong, physical, fast defensive line, and they're fast off the snap of the football. And they are going to give us problems. We saw the defensive line give us problems, and and not to go back over it, we know Sam Howell held the ball too long. A lot of that was on him. A majority of that was on him. But the line gave up a lot of pressure, though. When you're an offensive lineman, you can't let the pocket be collapsed too much, right? If you get pushed back 3 steps, guess what happens to the pocket? The pocket is now collapsed. It's smaller. The quarterback has to now adjust. He's got to move somewhere. He's got to hold the ball. You may not have given up a sack, but you've collapsed the integrity of that pocket. And that's exactly what this Eagles defensive line does to every offensive line they play. They collapse the pocket. They put pressure on the quarterback, and they make it easy for those cornerbacks that you were just talking about, Mike, who may not be the best, but guess what? They benefit from quarterbacks having to make hurried throws, poor throws. So that edge is going to go to the Eagles. We're going to have our hands full, and it's going to require Eric Bieniemy to scheme around this defensive line, use some of that aggressiveness against them, whether it's misdirection, whether it's screens, whether it's draws, something, because moving the pocket, but you can't just straight drop back and expect good things to happen with that type of defensive line against our offensive line of Nick Gates, Sam Cosmi, Sadiq Charles, and then the 2 tackles. I think Wiley's struggled pretty well this year. He's gotten beaten multiple times. Leno's been okay. I think Cosmi's been solid. He's been solid to good. Nick Gates, I think he's just been okay. Sadiq, I just think Sadiq's an average football player. So I think we're going to have our hands cut out or work cut out for us if we're talking about we're just going to be a whole pass game, right? If we're just going to pass every play, it's going to be a long day, and they're gonna make quick work of us. But if we run the football, if we try to mix up, our game plan and not let the Eagles just kind of tee off on us, then we've got a shot. If you remember last year, guess what our offensive line did? We ran the football. We ran it a lot. And we were able to control the line of scrimmage. We were able to keep their defense off balance and not tee off on the quarterback. So I think that's going to be a huge key here is if our offensive line has to go backwards, right? If they have to drop back every time, we're going to be in trouble. Um, that being
Major
said,
trouble.
my yeah, well, it's going to be a lot more sacks and a lot more interceptions if that's the case. So we definitely need some more bounce. We need some more running. We've got to establish our offensive line on Sunday against the Eagles. All right, let's go over to the Eagles side of the ball with their wide receivers and with their quarterbacks. With their wide receivers and with our quarterbacks and our secondary, kind of what kind of matchup do we have there, Mike?
It's interesting. We have, I feel like personally, we have the two cornerbacks that matches up perfectly with their two wide receivers. I mentioned it already prematurely. That's my fault. My apologies. But the Devontae Smith Emmanuel Forbes matchup, that's going to be fun to watch because they both have the same body size. They're both slim. They're both
They're both
fast. They're
militant.
both they're both lightweights, and seeing them two go at it is going to be a spectacle. And vice versa, you got AJ Brown and Benjamin St. Juice. St. Juice is a big body corner. AJ Brown is a big body receiver, and it can get physical for that matchup. And I actually like AJ Brown as a receiver back when he was in Tennessee and in Philly. Very explosive, very explosive. You can't sleep on him. Um, I don't really trust his quarterback too much to get him the ball the way a quarterback normally gets their receivers the ball. He struggles a lot with traditional passing. But when they take shots,
Yep.
they take shots, AJ Brown is as good, if not better, than McLaurin at getting those jump balls and making this taking advantage of his body size and body and receivers out. If you remember last season when Derek Forrest caught that interception, Brown had the ball in his Brown had it in his hands for a millisecond. So it wasn't like we really locked him up on that play. It was just it's football. The ball bounced or slipped through his hands and Forrest caught it, and the
And
rest is history.
that's a great point that you just kind of pointed out there with AJ Brown and kind of the passes he gets from Jalen Hurts, right? Like you said, a lot of it is they dump off to the running backs or quick passes,
Mm-hmm.
and then they'll take these calculated shots, right? Maybe 3, 4, 5 a game, depending on how the game's going, right? If it's a blowout, it'll probably be more. But they take these deep shots to AJ Brown, and just like you said, he's a big body receiver. He's explosive. He can high point the football and wrestle it away from guys and things like that. So that's a big matchup. And you think with his size, do you think it's Forrest who gets the matchup, or you think it's Kendall?
Um,
Or not Forrest, I'm sorry, St. Juice.
St. Juice.
Yeah.
It'll be a mix. Like, I'm glad you said something about Fuller because I was going to bring him up.
Yeah.
He's having a good season,
He
man,
is. He's having
so
a really
far.
good year. Really good.
I would say that him and Curl have been the most consistent members in the secondary.
Yeah.
Everyone know. Well, I'm sorry, and St. Juice, Curl, St. Juice, and Fuller have been the most consistent people in the secondary. Everybody else has at least made one mistake. Dark Forest, he gave up. Well, he helped. He was a part of one of the touchdowns earlier in the game,
Yep.
and Percy Butler was the second part. Like they schemed us, they got us, they tricked us.
Yep.
I don't like. I'm gonna be real with y'all. I don't think we play another quarterback this season as good as Josh Allen.
No.
I know y'all love Jalen Hurts, but he is not Josh Allen. So I think the defense can get back on track this week, and the secondary is going to be a huge help but they're going to need help from the position you're talking about next.
Yes, absolutely. And just to give Kendall Fuller some shine, some flowers in single coverage so far this year, he's got a 91.9 coverage grade, one catch of 9 yards. That's it. One interception, four incompletions, a zero point 0.0 passer rating. So just like you said, Kendall is playing well this year. Um, and I think I think he's kind of set the tone for those other guys there because they're all, outside of this past Sunday, they all seem to be playing pretty well. But they're going to need to play even better this coming Sunday. Um, let's go offensive line. Let's go offensive line for the Eagles because Mike, I think you might know, you might not know. I love offensive line play. I love good offensive lines. For me, the foundation of any team is the offensive line. If you have a below average quarterback, if you have an elite offensive line, you can make him average. If you got an average quarterback, you can make him above average with an elite offensive line. And if you've got an above average QB, you can make him excellent with a really good offensive line. It just makes everything easier. You can do more plays, open up your playbook with a great offensive line. You can develop young quarterbacks, something that we're trying to do here as well, too, with a young quarterback. We saw the development of Jalen Hurts last year with a absolutely dominant offensive line. And that's what the Eagles have. Like, I don't think people appreciate how good they are. This is one of the best offensive lines we've seen in football in probably the last 5 years. Last year and this year, they have just been dominant. There's not another offensive line that's as good. There's other good ones out there, but they're not better. Like it's the Eagles and then everybody else when it comes to offensive line. They don't open up holes. They open up freeways. Like the running backs, if you watch their game, their running back is like sometimes he'll slow down in the hole because he's like, where is everybody? They're so wide open, these holes. And Jalen Hurts has all day to throw, which is a great problem to have if you're the Eagles. Good.
Let me hit you with something. So I'm looking at their depth chart right now.
Yeah.
And I know something jumps out immediately at me regarding their offensive line. They have a 6th round pick and a 7th round pick on the team. But both of those players have been on the team for at least 5 years.
Yep.
Other than that, they have a 1st and 2nd round picks on their offensive line.
Yeah.
And they got 2 of them within the last 2 years. Landon Dickerson and Cam Jurgens.
Yep.
Both of those players were available for Washington in the draft. And they went with a corner and a defensive tackle. 2 positions that they are already deep enough at. You didn't need to spend 2 second rounders on those 2 spots. And I'm pretty sure they'll contribute eventually. But if your plan was to win now, you needed to shore up that offensive line. And you trade those 2 picks for offensive linemen, and this team is in a considerably different position right now. But as of now, as it stands, I'll go look at Washington's offensive line. And here's everybody came from another team except for Cosme and Charles.
Yep.
And one more thing. I'm sorry. It's kind of ironic that our best offensive lineman is a 2nd round pick. And I'm done. All right, I'm done.
No, I loved all of that because it's so important and it's such common sense things that this team sometimes just forgets to do or doesn't want to do. They always, for me, it just feels like they try to outsmart themselves and they're like, oh, no, that's all right. We'll just get another safety or a defensive tackle and it'll be okay. And also, people don't know the left tackle for the Eagles, Jordan Mailata. Like, this guy is enormous and he is supremely athletic. And the Eagles scouts found him. I think he was playing rugby. Like, they found unconventional ways to get top tier talent on the offensive line. Like, this guy is a supreme athlete and he's enormous and he's nimble and quick out there at the left tackle. So he may have only been a 6th or 7th round pick, but they found him through an untraditional, unconventional way because they were like, however we can get our offensive line better, we're going to do it. So yeah, the Eagles' offensive line is dominant. They are absolutely dominant, and them going up against our defensive line, that's going to be the story. The game will be decided there because the Buffalo Bills' offensive line handled us. I love our defensive line, but I'm not gonna, there's no way other to describe it. They handled our defensive line. Josh Allen was sacked 0 times. Josh Allen had plenty of time in the pocket, and so much so that he he didn't really have to run. He ran a couple of times when the coverage was really good, but even then, I mean, he picked up big chunks of yards. We've got to get pressure. If Del Rio, if we're not getting it with those front four, Del Rio needs to scheme up some pressure. He needs to call some stunts on the line, some blitzes, whatever it is, because that offensive line for the Eagles is excellent, and they can move anybody off the ball, and that's how they're winning all these games. The offensive line is just wearing out the defense on there. So, all right. Mike, let's talk about before we go and get too far into this, let's talk about the quarterbacks, because this is a game that's going to come down to the quarterbacks. Let's start off with Jalen Hurts and the Philadelphia Eagles. What are we looking at with Jalen Hurts this coming Sunday?
So I owe the Bama apology a little bit because I said he's not Josh Allen. That's half true. He can scramble like Allen.
Oh, yeah.
And I do feel like early in the game, I think it was 3rd and 17, no, 3rd and 10. Allen scrambled for 11 yards and got the first down.
Yep.
It happened again a couple of drives later, I believe, where he broke contain or broke the pocket and ran for the first down. That's something that Washington always struggles with. And I remember, I believe it was Craig Hoffman that said earlier in the offseason that all the quarterbacks are mobile quarterbacks that you're going to play this season. It started with Dobbs, who was second. Russell Wilson. It started with Russell Wilson second.
Yeah.
Josh Allen last week. You got Jalen Hurts this week. Justin Fields the week after that. Desmond Ridder the week after that. So, you're going to have to figure out how to stop these running quarterbacks. You're going to have to figure it out. But, like I also was saying earlier, he's not the best of passers. It's that simple. It's his 4th season or 3rd season, I believe. And he's still having issues passing the ball efficiently. Yes, he can hit the big plays. That's wonderful. But when it comes, the Chiefs and Commanders showed us last season, if you can get the Eagles in the passing situation, they're cooked.
Yeah.
And that's solely on Hurts. He has to be a better passer if he wants this team to get over the top and actually win the Super Bowl. He has to be a better passer, and not even from the pocket, just a better passer, period.
Yeah.
And he definitely struggles against Washington. He had that good game last season, but you take away that one game where William Jackson was doing Lord knows what. Yeah. He struggles against Washington. So I'm expecting him to run around a little bit, but if Washington can force a couple of 3rd and longs, it's not going to be a good day for him.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. If you looked at a couple of his games this year, throwing the football, he struggled a little bit. And it's, you've seen some lower scoring games with them, with the Eagles, and it's really been the run game that shined for them, and that offensive line just kind of wearing teams down. And then, late in those games, you get a couple of more passes, a couple of more touchdowns. So, for those guys, I think, it'll be key for our defense to keep him in the pocket. If he starts running around, we're going to be in trouble. And there's just no two ways around it. I mean, we saw Jamin Davis, kind of spied Russell Wilson, right? And he ran him down, and that caused the fumble. I thought Jamin Davis was going to do the same kind of with Josh Allen, but we didn't. And we let Josh Allen just run chunks of yards whenever he left the pocket. He just left and ran and got as much as he wanted. And that's just not going to cut it. And we're going to need to do that again. Jamin Davis in that last game, in that second game that we did beat the Eagles, Jamin Davis shut off some running lanes there for Jalen Hurts. His rushing total wasn't a lot. I think he had like 20 yards on like 6 carries or something like that. And he really couldn't run, and he had to stay in that pocket. So we've got to do that again. Hopefully Del Rio doesn't go away from that. He goes back to that. Let Jamin use that 4.37 speed that he has, and just kind of spy him and run and shut that run game down of the Eagles, because that's going to be where Hurts is most deadly. Well, that brings us to our guy. Our guy was a little rough last week. He, first 2 weeks, first week, I think he was okay. Second week, I thought he looked much better, looked really good. And then last week happened, and it looked rough. Sack, interception, sack, interception, sack, interception. That's about all that we saw from him all day. Game plan wasn't good enough. His decision making wasn't good enough. Offensive line wasn't good enough, and we damn sure didn't run the football even a little bit. Brian Robinson looked great, but we barely used him. The quarterback play has to be better. Sam Howell has to be better. And I think, for a lot of Sam Howell, being as inexperienced as he is, a lot of it has to fall on Bieniemy. We've got to have a better game plan. We've got to get the ball out of his hands quickly. If we're going to drop him back 7 steps and say, hey, read the full field, okay, well, then you're going to get what you got Sunday, which is interception and sack. And I mean, this is something we said in the offseason pod when we did, when we talked about Eric Bieniemy's offense. Get the ball out of Sam's hands quickly. Get it into our playmakers' hands. That's what we want. We want the ball out quick. We want to see the quick game. We didn't see it on Sunday. We want to see the running game. The running game was nowhere to be seen. Brian Robinson looks like he's taken another step in his progression, and he's hitting more 10, 12-yard plus runs, a couple 20-yard runs, right? Like, he looks much improved. Utilize him. Don't let it all just be on Sam. If Sam's going to throw it 50 times, we're going to be in trouble, right? It's going to look like last Sunday. So I think he certainly can do it. You saw it in Denver. You saw some of the throws he can make when he has time, or when he's decisive, or when the ball comes out quickly, especially when the ball comes out quickly. And I think we're okay there. But we got to do it. If we call Sunday's game like against the Bills, if we do that against the Eagles are going to tear him up. It's gonna be even worse, and he might get injured. And you don't want that for any player. So let's get the ball out of his hands quickly. Let's have a diverse game plan. Where were the screens? There was no screens. Running game. Get the ball out of Sam's hands quickly. That's what we need to see. So what else do you think we need to see from our quarterback position on Sunday?
Just the basics. Honestly, he can do the advanced stuff. It feels like the passes, the scrambling. Like, he can do that. Like, even in Buffalo, he had a nice scramble, juke the bound and everything. Like, it was crazy. But he needs to protect himself too. Like, you don't want too many of those runs in the middle of the field where you can't get down or get out of bounds. So I would just like him to just learn the basics. If you know you have a play with a 7-step drop back, and you know your defense isn't going to give you the most time, as soon as you hit that 7-step, if nobody's open, go. Even if it's just for a 3-yard run and a slide. That's better than taking a 12-yard, a negative 12-yard sack. So, just play smart football. I really wish Alex Smith had a better relationship with the team, because I feel like he's the best quarterback to teach young quarterbacks on how you win a football game. Y'all don't understand. This man, Alex Smith, is the only quarterback I've seen for Washington go 11-5.
Yeah.
He didn't have an 11-5 season, but as a starter in Washington, he was 11-5. And you know why? Because that man know how to play quarterback. He might not be the most talented passer. He got older, so he wasn't able to scramble as much. But when it comes to decision making,
Yeah.
that man always makes the best decision. And if he had a little bit stronger arm, he definitely would have won the Super Bowl.
And
that man was good.
That's an underrated point there about Alex Smith is he understood the game situation and he understood, hey, they're asking me to do a 7-step drop. I got one leg. The offensive line ain't that great. I'm going to hit my check down right away. And he would do that. He'd hit J.D. McKissick right from the jump, and he gave J.D. McKissick time to run and catch 10 yards. And that 2020 year, J.D. McKissick had like 70, 80 catches, and he got so many first downs just by getting the ball to him quickly, getting to his outlet quickly. So I think you're absolutely right. That's something that Sam could have picked up, that he could have seen, he could have learned quickly on how to manage a football game. Like, hey, you might not have your fastball today, right? Everything might not be working for you. That doesn't mean you can't win the game, though, right? Like, here's some other things how you win the game. Like, here's how you check out of this play and into another play that's a little bit better. That way it's not a sack, and maybe it's a 2-yard gain instead of a 4-yard loss, right. That type of thing. So, yeah, I think you're absolutely right, and that was a very underrated aspect of his game. Hey, let me read you something here real quick, because I think this goes to your point about Jalen Hurts and the opportunity that we, hey, look, it's going to be tough to beat the Eagles, but it's not impossible. It's tough, but it's not. The Patriots played them 25-20. The Patriots actually had a chance to win the game at the end. The receiver stepped out of bounds. This is Jalen Hurts' number, his stats in that game: 22 of 33. 170 yards passing and 1 touchdown, 3 sacks. Like we're not facing 500 yards passing, 5 touchdowns like what we saw, kind of on Sunday there against the Bills. That was the first game. The second game, Jalen Hurts, 18 of 23, 193 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 1 INT, 4 sacks. And then this game against the Buccaneers just this past week, he finally got over 200 yards passing. He was 277 yards passing, 1 touchdown, 2 picks, and 1 sack. He's been struggling in throwing the football. I think, to your point, that was a great point. He's struggling this year. So if we can kind of confuse him on the back end, we can hold our coverage. Kendall Fuller can continue to play at a high level. Benjamin St. Juste at a high level. Emmanuel Forbes, our safeties, I think Forrest and Butler need to play a little bit better. They've been a little loose there. Cam Curl's been nice. He's been fine. But if we can hold up in coverage, like, there are plays to be made there. Now, it ain't going to be easy because that offensive line will give him plenty of time to sit back there and read everything out, or they're just going to run it on us and wear us down. But we have an opportunity. We have a shot to do it. Mike, anything else with this Eagles matchup coming Sunday that you want to see? Let's talk about it from the coaching perspective. We broke down kind of the position groups of what we want to see from players and how they might perform. But what do you want to see from the coaches? Eagles coaches, Washington coaches this Sunday.
So I believe Sirianni is calling plays for the Eagles.
I believe
so. That's different because last year they had what's his face? The coach in Indianapolis now.
Yep.
Oh, by the way, pause for a second. Shout out to the Colts. They 2-1, I think. Like
Minshew mania. Minshew.
But yeah, it's not going to differ from a lot of the stuff that they did last year. I watched a couple of games, a couple of plays, so far from the Eagles, and it looks like they're still running similar plays as they've been running the last few years.
Yep.
Their defensive coordinator, I'm not sure. Actually, I can pull that up real quick.
He's due. Both coordinators are gone, right? Jonathan Gannon, we saw him in week 1. And look, if you want to shout out somebody, shout out to the Arizona Cardinals who beat down the Dallas Cowboys. Everybody told us, oh, well, you didn't beat anybody. It's just Arizona. I'm sorry. Arizona should be 2-1 because they also should have beat the New York Giants too. But right. Shout out to them for beating the Cowboys.
So I think I can't pronounce his name, Sean Desai or Desai is the Eagles defensive coordinator,
On the side.
and
Yep.
it's his first season.
Oh, okay.
So even though he has the weapons, um, Bieniemy might can scheme him up. Like I'm not off the Bieniemy bandwagon off of one horrible game call, and it was horrible. Like I'm gonna be real with you. Like I said, Brian Robinson only had 70 yards. I mean, only had 10 carries on 70 yards.
Yeah,
Like
that can't happen
I
again.
like you gotta feed him. And I was looking at the stats from last season. He had 26 rushes on 86 yards versus Philly when they beat him the last game. So to me, it's simple. Like the enemy has to lean on its running backs. And I like what Grant Paulson said earlier on the radio. He said, if we're not using Antonio Gibson as a receiver, what's the point of having him on the field? Run the ball more with Chris Rodriguez.
Yeah.
Like, run the ball more with him, and you can, like, control the clock a little.
You just mentioned Gibson. Let me ask you your thoughts on Gibson. We saw a fumble last week against the Bills. Where are you at with Gibson? Where do you think he should be used, and what do you think his impact could be?
I'm 1 foot in, 1 foot out with Gibson now because the fumbling, and not only the fumbling, but it seems like he fumbles when we're on a good drive. Like that game, the fumble on Sunday was really like, it deflated us.
Yeah.
Like it's like, hey, we just can't get going, and every time we do, something goes wrong. And you can't have. I think they had 2 turnovers in the red zone. You can't have turnovers in the red zone. That's 6 points at least. Yep. Also, and speaking of coaching, going back to coaching, I don't know what Rivera was doing when he went for it on 4th and goal from the 1. I know, like, it's the Bills. You want to score. You want to get points on the board or whatever. But it's the same thing I said about Alex Smith. You just got to play football. Like, just because it's 2023 and more people are going for it nowadays, you didn't have to do that from the 1 yard line. You could have kicked the field goal and made the game 10-3 or 16-3 even.
Yeah.
And I don't know. So yeah, when it comes to predictions, I know we're not predicting yet, but it's going to be tough for me to predict the Commanders to win.
Yeah, we'll get to the predictions in a second. For me, coaching, like I think the Eagles coaching, I don't necessarily know that they, from a schematic standpoint, are going to out scheme us or anything. I think from a talent perspective, they just are better, right? They have done a great job of picking better talent, and because of that, they're able to just kind of outwear teams. Run faster, jump higher, that type of thing. I look at their offense. They're running basic stuff, like very, very basic stuff. And it's because they can just move people, out of the way. Like, when I said their offensive line doesn't open up holes, they open up freeways. I mean that. Like, go watch was it DeAndre Swift? He's out there running, and there's like the camera angle can't even find defenders in the same frame because it's just him running by himself through some of these holes. So, I'm not too concerned about the Eagles and their coaching staff. It's more about the talent and the amount of talent that they have, because they have talent everywhere. There's not really a kind of a weak spot. There's some inexperience on their defense, right? Their safeties got changed out. Some of the linebackers are a little bit different. So there's certainly inexperience with some of their players because they lost some guys in free agency. But they just replaced them with younger, really high athletic guys as well. So really where I'm concerned with the coaching is on our end. I'm going to start with Bieniemy. I'm a big fan of Bieniemy. I'm a believer. I think he is a good offensive coordinator. The performance or the game plan he came up with for Sunday against the Bills was not good. It was not good at all. I'm not going to pretend that it was. It was a Scott level Turner game plan. It just was 5, 7 step drop back with a quarterback who's not getting the ball out quick enough and an offensive line that's not great, and you don't run the football at all. That's a Scott Turner special right there. You can't draw it up any more than that for Scott Turner. So Eric Bieniemy, I expect more. I expect a game plan similar to what we saw like in Denver, where we ran the football more, where we threw screens, we utilized the quick game, we moved the pocket some. We saw none of that on Sunday against the Bills. We need to see that against the Eagles, because if we just drop Sam back, we already know what that result's going to be. Move the pocket, run the football, utilize Brian Robinson, utilize Chris Rodriguez. Do not ever run Antonio Gibson up the middle. As far as I'm concerned, he should never actually run the football ever again. He can catch passes, catch these. Where are the running back swing passes? Like these just little running back swing passes where he can catch it for 5-6 yards. Do something like that. But we just can't have the fumbles, and it's not there. It's really not there. Let him be that receiver. Send him in motion, split him up out wide, wherever you want to put him, use him in the screen game. That's a great place for him there. But we've got to get better from offensive coordinator, and I think Eric Bieniemy can do that, and I'm hopeful he'll do that, because otherwise, that game plan ain't going to work for this Sunday against the Eagles, and it won't work for regardless what quarterback's back there. Ron Rivera, he's got to stay out of the way, let these guys coach, let his assistants coach. I know he's heavily involved in the defensive game plan, but we need a spy on Jalen Hurts. Why we didn't have one against Josh Allen, I don't know. It was baffling to me. But Jalen Hurts, he is a deadly runner, and his runs, some of his runs, especially on third down, are the ones that are the most hurtful, because we might get him in 3rd and 10, and then here comes a 15-yard run on third down. We've got to stop that. We've got to keep him hemmed in. So Del Rio, don't be stubborn in your play calls. Change it up. Mike, actually, I wanted to ask you this. I heard this, and I heard this from Rivera this week, that, and I don't know if he meant to say this or not. So apparently Jack Del Rio gives the defensive tackles, John and Duran, the ability to have a two-way go. So they can choose whichever gap they want to go on any given play. They don't know until they line up. Now, the problem with that is the linebacker has to now play off of that. The linebacker just can't go to the B gap, because Duran might be going into the B gap and he's got to go to the A gap, or he's got to go outside. And it requires a lot more thinking and time on the linebacker's part. And this is where we see some of these linebackers, Jamin, Cody Barton, underperform, or it looks like they're standing still because they're trying to react off of what Duran or John is doing at the last second and go the other way. And I thought to myself, okay, that's nice and all, but you're handicapping yourself here. You're making your linebackers slower than what they are, because now they thought they were going A gap. Now they got to go B gap, or now they got to go outside. Like, what is your thought on that?
Yeah, that's very interesting, bro. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he has his reasons for it, and who am I to criticize?
So Rivera said why he's doing that, because John and Duran are really good, right? Like, because they're so talented, he doesn't want to take their ability away to make a play. So he gives them that leeway because they're really good, right? Like, he's not giving John Ridgeway that ability.
They're kind of contradicting themselves with that, because they've been harping at Young to stay disciplined, stay in this rush lanes and not break contain. So why is the inside able to do whatever they want on these rushes, or trying to stop the run? And we get gashed a lot for runs, and that can be the reason why.
Exactly. And that was kind of my thinking. Why we struggle against the run, or why we get gashed, is because we pick the wrong gap to go through, and the defense probably understands, what, these guys are guessing at which gap to go through. So we give them a look, and then we just run the other way. So it was something I heard this week from Ron, and I just thought that's not smart. And I don't care how great Jonathan Allen is or Duran Pay. They just whatever the defense says gap they need to go through, they should probably do that, and then let the linebacker take whatever's left, as opposed to trying to wait and guess at the last minute. Like when you make people think about things at the last second or be indecisive, they play slower, and we're constantly, blaming these linebackers, and maybe it's not necessarily their fault. Maybe it is a scheme. Is we're asking them to do too much too soon.
Mm-hmm.
All right. With that being said, with all that we just talked about, matchup, personnel, coaching, all of that, score prediction for the game, outcome. What do you think happens Sunday?
Unfortunately, I think it's going to be more like the first game for last season, where we just can't get right and on offense, and it's going to, matter of fact, the same thing that happened last week too. The offense is going to struggle. I'm convinced the offensive line is just not good enough, and I don't know if Bieniemy has enough time to come up with a completely different game plan than he had last week. And it's a shame because I remember him saying in his introductory press conference, if we got to run 100 times to win, we'll run 100 times. If we got to pass 100 times, we'll pass 100 times. Well, last week, he kind of went against his words. I didn't say that. He said that.
That's right.
So with all that, I'm going to go Philly 27, Washington 10.
Ooh, another beatdown for us. Yeah, I think you're right. Like Bieniemy did say that, and I'm expecting better. They were all embarrassed, the whole team, offense, defense, coaches, everybody. They were all embarrassed. When you get embarrassed, you can either go into your shell and just let everything pile up on you, or you can do something about it. I think they do something about it. Do I think it's going to be enough to win the game? Unfortunately, I don't think so. I think Philadelphia just has a better roster than they do. That doesn't mean we can't beat them. We absolutely can. We did it last year. We, in fact, were the first team to beat them last year. So they can be beaten. That's not that's not an impossibility. And the Eagles haven't been playing that great in terms of all around performance, but they've been good enough. I think we're going to see a better performance on offense. Is it going to be a 5 touchdown performance? No. But I think you're going to see a much better showing than Sunday. I think the defense will play a little bit better. I think the defense will still, do what the defense does. I think they'll get gashed in the run game. I'm very worried about that. I think I think the offensive line of the Eagles is going to have their way with our defensive line this Sunday. I think the offense will be a little bit better. I think you're right. I think the Eagles come out and win this one. I think it's 28 Eagles, 21 us. I think Sam Howell plays much better. Offense looks better, but we just don't have enough to get out the win on that. Mike, final thoughts, last words, anything you want to think about, talk about, say?
I hope we're wrong, obviously.
Oh, yeah.
Like I want us to win, and I'm gonna talk trash like I always do when we win. I would love for us to get at the Eagles just as much as I would if we beat the Cowboys and Giants. Like it's no, but I don't know. Beating the Eagles kind of feels better because they've been getting a lot of new fans recently.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, man, we need to put a stop to this. And also shout out to everybody in the comments. We really appreciate y'all listening to us. We know there's a lot of podcasts out there, but y'all pick us to listen to, and I'm grateful for that. And everybody just have a good weekend. Make sure y'all check out the pregame and postgame.
Yep, pregame and postgame. We will be doing that live before and after the game, win or lose or draw. Hopefully, it's not a draw. My final thoughts. I don't want to pick the Eagles. I dislike the Eagles a whole bunch. I want us to win by 40. But after, seeing the performance on Sunday, they've got to show something better because that performance isn't going to get it done. So I think they'll be better. I don't know by how much they'll be better, but they got a lot of work to do. But this season, for me, the season was always about developing Sam Howell, seeing what you have in a quarterback. This is not a Super Bowl team. If anybody out there thought this was a Super Bowl roster, look, um, I'm sorry that you thought that, but this is not a Super Bowl roster. It's not a roster that was going to be in the NFC Championship game. Unfortunately, we got our Super Bowl this year with Snyder selling the team, and this was always going to be a kind of a wash year. It's a lame duck year. This was a year. Develop Sam Howell, see what you have. 2024, everything will be brand new then. But anyways, thank you for listening. Stay locked in with us. Post game, we'll be there. Check out the website, commanders247.com. Check out the YouTube. Follow us on all of our social media as well. We love y'all. We'll see you next time.